In the last module, we considered the different types of assessment purposes. This week, we will look at the different types of instruments and methods and how these should be determined. When choosing instruments, we must first ensure that we are choosing instruments that are appropriate for the purpose for which we're using them. For example, it's not appropriate to use a screening instrument to determine program effectiveness. Screening instruments are meant to be used as one part of a broad assessment system and should identify a child's developmental level at one point in time. Additionally, technical adequacy of instruments should be considered, as should the instrument's ability to provide information that can be used in planning instruction and intervention. Technical adequacy involves the reliability and validity of an instrument. A reliable instrument will provide the same or very similar results every time. A valid instrument correctly measures what it is intended to measure. In other words, we wouldn't use a language test to measure a child's motor skills. The test manual should provide evidence of reliability and validity and should explain how each of these were determined. Another point to consider in relation to the assessment instruments and approaches is the way test information is obtained. Generally, there are indirect and direct types of assessment. Indirect assessment involves observation-based procedures. Criterion and curriculum-based assessments are generally used as indirect assessment measures. They allow the teacher to collect observation or performance data in an ongoing manner to measure a child's progress. Indirect assessment methods are more consistent with recommended practices in early childhood because they are better aligned with the way young children interact in their environments. Because indirect assessment is somewhat based on the opinions of the administrator, careful training and ongoing monitoring are required to maintain reliability of administration. Direct assessment methods involve standardized administration practices. This means the test must be administered in a specific way and with specific materials in order to obtain reliable results. Direct assessment involves a question and response format, and these are less appropriate for young children. However, this type of assessment is most often used in determining eligibility for services, as well as in large-scale research projects, because of the standardization procedures and the standardized scores that can be obtained from their administration. When choosing an instrument, the issue of bias must also be considered. As we discussed in Module 1, we must strive to ensure that assessment practices are non-discriminatory. Issues of bias help us consider the appropriateness of instruments for different groups. When choosing an instrument, read the test manual to determine how the instrument has been normed. Ensure that the instrument has been used with different groups of children and that it is relevant for the group with which you plan to use it. In summary, when choosing an assessment instrument or method, carefully consider the purpose of the assessment as well as the group or the child or group of children with whom you're using the assessment. The Kentucky Early Childhood Continuous Assessment Guide provides examples of instruments and their uses to help guide your choices.